My association with Ceredigion goes back more years than I'd really like to say. I was a student at Lampeter in the 1980s, and that is when there was there were 4 televisions between 700 students, and en-suite facilities were a distant future dream that, at that time, and indeed in some cases perhaps a state of mind. But so very different. And I was recently given the honour of being made an honorary fellow of University of Wales, Trinity St David, and so my connection with Lampeter continues. In terms of some of the work that's taking place in Ceredigion, first of all, I'm very pleased to say that we are not experiencing the type of crime wave that Hinterland would suggest. I'm very pleased with that. However, the one disappointment I have is we also don't have the same mobile phone coverage that, that they seem to have either. Have you noticed how when the detective inspector is driving between Aberystwyth and Cardigan, he doesn't seem to have any problem at all making a phone call, and I don't experience that pleasure. Yes, indeed. So where are we with crime at the moment? Well, members will be aware that over the past 2 years, there's been a major effort on the part of the police to make sure that we accurately record crime. Previously, forces were recording crime in different ways, and of course being measured in the way that they achieved crime targets. We've made great strides in Dyfed-Powys to measure crime accurately. As well, so recording crimes that at one time would not have been recorded, and that has meant there have been some changes, and there are other factors that have impacted on our crime. What that means is at the moment in Ceredigion, over the last year we've seen a 15% increase in recorded crime. That's 391 additional crimes, so that gives you some idea of the number of crimes we have. Fewer than 3,000 crimes in Ceredigion, making you really one of the very safest places to live in the United Kingdom. And Dyfed-Powys certainly has the lowest crime in England and Wales. Just to give you some, and all but one force at the moment is reporting increases. It's reporting increases in certain types of crime. Let me just explain where some of those increases have been experienced, and I think you'll then understand why I make some of the comments that I do about the reason behind it. First of all, one of them is we categorize crimes in different ways. Some of the categories don't mean a lot to the public, but they're the way that we categorize things. One of them is miscellaneous crimes against society, and then we have little categories within that. And one of those is obscene publications, which makes us all think, doesn't it, about the publication of Lady Chatterley's Lover and things like this. What actually gets included in there are some of the sexting crimes that we have to record. Many of these between children and young people who we don't aim to criminalize, and we don't necessarily apply the criminal law to, but we have to record those as crimes under the rules that we have. We've seen a great increase in there, and I would suggest that we will continue to do so. I think it's very important that we deal with those in a common sense way, and that we don't criminalize our children for growing up, but also identify where there is predatory and dangerous behavior taking place and deal with that accordingly. That's one area of great growth that we're seeing. Another one then is sexual offences. And what we see here is a greater focus on recording reported crimes accurately, but every force across the country has also seen a significant growth in these. And the reason for that is we're laying at the door of some of the publicity given to some of the celebrity cases that have happened in the last 2 to 3 years. And we've seen a significant growth, a growth of about 22% in sexual offences being recorded. Now, we don't believe that this means there is a growth in the number of sexual offences being committed. We think that we're now being told about things that previously would not have been reported. Now, that has to be a good thing, but they are serious offences and have to be investigated, so they are themselves a proper drain, but a drain on our resources, which means that we have to make sure that we've got properly skilled people to investigate these, that we're able to deal properly with the forensic activity, and then, of course, Other agencies, such as the Crown Prosecution Service and the courts, need to be properly resourced to deal with that increase as well. But we'll keep you updated on these type of changes. We've also seen within Ceredigion a 30% increase in recorded violent crime. A large proportion of this is domestic abuse. And my view is that an improved reporting of domestic abuse is a good thing, because these are people reporting things to us that previously they would not have reported. And I would always urge any victim of domestic abuse to report that to the police. The reason I don't believe that we're seeing a major increase in violent crime in our communities is because we are not receiving more calls reporting violent crime, but we are recording it more effectively, and we're properly identifying and classifying those things that are being reported to us. So we are seeing an increase in domestic abuse, but we're not seeing an overall increase in people ringing us to report a violent crime. So I think there's something going on there, but I think it's more about what we're reporting, what we're identifying, and what we're dealing with. It's very dangerous for us to make assumptions, so we're continually monitoring this to see what's happening in the community to make sure we don't miss a changing trend, but that's my assessment at the present time. This is coupled with our reports of antisocial behaviour dropping by about the same amount as crime has risen, which would suggest to me the public don't phone us and report a crime or antisocial behaviour. They report something that's happening to them, and we put it into these categories. So that would seem to suggest to me that the focus on recording is having an impact. Another thing that would be of interest to members in a rural area such as ours is our responses to immediate calls. As you know, it's we cover the most in Dyfed and Powys. We cover the most rural area in Wales and England. We have, just to give you a comparison, we have about 2.8 officers per square mile. The next most sparsely populated police force in Wales and England has 4.7 per square mile, so pushing twice as many. So there's a big expanse for us to cover. We aim to attend immediate calls. That's the call that somebody might report to us on the 999 system. We aim to attend those within 20 minutes. And during March, we attended 97% of those in 20 minutes, which I think is an excellent service. It's not my doing. This is our people who are working in their communities. This is our control room staff and our police officers who are dealing with these matters. So I think that's, we need to keep our foot on the pedal with that one, but I think that's a significant service that's being delivered to people in a rural area like ours. Strength, we've been recruiting very significantly for the last 2 years, and will continue to do so to keep our numbers up. So at the last count, at the end of March, it changes all the time, as you know, with employment changes. At the end of March, in Dyfed and Powys, we had 1,163 police officers, 136 community support officers, 579 police staff doing supporting roles. We are continuing to recruit, so we'll have another 20 police officers by the end of July, and by the end of May, we'll be up to our establishment of 148 community support officers. Half of those funded by our budget, half of those funded by the Welsh Government budget. So I'm very, very pleased with those. The community support officers, which have been reduced in a number of police forces actually across Wales, I have no intention of doing the same thing. I have to say that all of my interaction with communities indicate that, that our community support officers are respected and valued and are performing a service and building trust and engagement with the community that is too valuable for us to lose. And so I intend that they should be guarded jealously so that we can actually make sure that we have those. What that means for you in Ceredigion itself is you have, there are at the moment 26 community support officers allocated to Ceredigion. You have 23, but the numbers will be increased with an additional 2 in Aberystwyth and 1 in Cardigan by the end of May. And police officers at the moment, allocated 113 to the communities in Cardigan, but at the moment you have 122. I'm not quite sure how that works, but I'd keep quiet about it if I were you at the moment. There will be an additional one in July. And then, of course, you have the support provided by Dyfed-Powys Police as a whole. It's not just about the officers that are stationed in Ceredigion. I think just a few pieces of news now about, you know, we have a mobile data project taking place. You'll see a lot of our officers using these. When you see a police officer using one of, I just carry this around, I don't know what it does. But if you've got, I can barely switch it on, I need my 12-year-old daughter to do that for me. But if you see an officer doing that, they're probably not just tweeting or using social media. They have these instead of pocket notebooks now. They use these to do much of their work. It means that they don't need to return to police stations to double key and fill in computers. It means that we don't need the same sort of back office support at headquarters for people to transfer what officers have written onto forms. And what that will do is, we estimate, will save our officers about 200,000 hours of additional work a year. Now that's the equivalent, doing a quick bit of mental arithmetic, about 100 officers, and we're currently working on how will we use that extra time to make sure that it adds value in the communities. But that's a big development for us, and I think we'll see more of the time there. A major focus on rural policing and collaborating with other forces as well. There was some excellent mention. I think there was one piece of performance I've forgotten to mention, and there were some really interesting mentions earlier of some sporting achievements in Ceredigion. I think we should also look at the sporting achievements of Dyfed-Powys Police. Our rugby team found its way to the British Police final yesterday. Unfortunately, they were beaten by Scotland in the final. But then we're beaten by Scotland in the national budget anyway, aren't we, as well? So I suppose it's sort of fair enough. But they did extremely well, and I think it would be worth congratulating our team for that. They come from all parts of the force. So yes, you have a number from Ceredigion, but they come from all areas. They come together to play these matches. They're not able to operate as a team all the time. So we're very proud of them, but we think it's an example of community engagement, and it builds morale as well. I'm comfortable to deal with any other question that you might wish to ask, because otherwise I'll just drone on for ages, and then the chair will stop me and throw me out. So I'm happy to deal with any questions, Chair, that members might find useful.
Right, the first one I've got is Paul Hinge.
Thank you very much indeed, Chief Constable, for a joyful report. And I've got 2 points that I'd like to make. One is a positive, and the other one is possibly not as positive, but I'd like you to consider and ponder it. The first one is, you were talking about sexting as an issue. I was fortunate enough to redo my child protection training only a few weeks ago within the council, and the colleagues who were sat around the table came from a fairly wide cross-section, not just councillors, but right across the social services and third sector people, were quite taken with the issue of the sexting side of things and the possible criminalisation of children for doing that. I mean, I don't know about other members around here, but we were, you know, we as children were never saw that. When we saw the Titbits paper, we thought that was quite something strong, you know. But these days, with these fantangled machines that we've got an issue as far as that's concerned, and they're using the technology to their hands. So that's the first question, or the first observation. The second one is something that has actually happened to me, and I'm finding it a little difficult to kind of come to terms. I witnessed an accident some time ago, probably ended January, on Penglais Hill. There were two, in Aberystwyth, there were two accidents, pretty much one after the other, on the hill. Now then, we went there, stopped, saw the accident. Police attended, well, they were everywhere. The whole place was shut down. And an officer, using that contraption that you've got in your pocket, came along, took loads of details, and then said to me, well, you will have possibly a communication coming through the post for you to fill in. I said, oh, when? He said, oh, it'll take weeks. It actually took 9 weeks to come through. That communication was so in-depth, maybe it's to do with my age, I don't know. I had difficulty in trying to recount all the in-depth questions that they were trying to ask in this document. Now, when I thought that I'd given enough information to the police officer, because there were a number of witnesses to it, to the police officer who was there, to give them some kind of overall picture of it. Now, if that is what you're doing, perhaps you're missing a trick here, because if you're not going to get everything in there and somebody has actually caused a criminal offence, whether it be on the road or whatever else, they need, or the prosecution needs, as much strong identified evidence as possible. So can I have some kind of thoughts from yourself on that one, please, as well?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. In terms of the first point you make about sexting, I think it's extremely important that we don't criminalise children for growing up. There are things changing in our society, and the interactions that 2 and 3 children would have had are now carried out effectively in the public domain using electronic equipment. We have to make sure that how we approach this and how we interpret the law, and how the courts indeed interpret the law, is what Parliament decided when they made some of these laws in the first place. The complexity for our officers, of course, is that they have to make a difficult judgment when they're dealing with these between what is about children growing up that is essentially harmless, and where do we have predatory and criminal behaviour. And sometimes we will all get it wrong, but we have to focus on making sure that we're doing the right thing to protect our children. I think we will be having discussions about this issue for some time to come as technology changes, but I'd like members to be reassured that we are fully aware of these issues, and it is not our intention to criminalise children for growing up. In terms of, you raise a pertinent and important point about how difficult it is to recount information after an event, and Superintendent John has some detailed knowledge of this, which will assist.
Yes, perhaps if I could assist. I do appreciate your frustration there, because I think any of us that has to try to recount something any period of time afterwards, retaining those details is extremely difficult. Just to let you know how we're set up, the officers that will attend, I would assume from the description of the incident you said, it would probably be a road traffic officer that would compile the report. There may have been a number there. And that report would be considered by, we have decision makers that are based within our headquarters department, and they would consider whether there would be any offences that have been committed. And from what you describe, it may well be that they wanted to have it in the form of a formal document, which is that questionnaire, which is very long, I know. I used to work in the criminal justice department, so that's how I've got a little bit of knowledge of this. What I would say is I think we need to go back and take that back to the department that looks at that, because that kind of time to come up with that, I think, is quite unfair, really, and I'm concerned to hear that. So it shouldn't take that long to do that. And also, what you said at the roadside, that is evidence, you know. So I think we do need to follow that one up.
Next one I've got is Councillor Roland Rhys Evans.
With all you've given us some data there earlier, I just want to know, perhaps on your professional opinion or considered opinion on drugs problems within Ceredigion, maybe within the force, and would you consider that decriminalising drugs would help you or not, or would that make things even worse for you as an authority, a police body? Just thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, and that is an issue that's frequently raised. I think what's important for me to say is that the police service we do not make the law, and we do not lobby for the law to be changed. I think what's important to remember is that it's for Parliament to make the law. It's for the devolved assemblies to pass acts in their areas of legislative competence. I think it's really dangerous if we do that and we deal with those matters. But I think it is important for us to form a judgment on the impact of some of these drugs on other types of offending, and deal with those then within the confines of the law. So I'm not aiming to be evasive, but I will be, because it's not for us to make the law. We also have to be aware of the impact of so-called legal highs, some of the psychoactive substances that we know have had a very significant impact, in particular on some children, and in some parts of Wales as young as 11. So, you know, there are those, we don't yet know what the impact of those will be long term on some of the children that have been taking these. But the legal highs issues, and I use it in inverted commas, are a significant problem for us. On the positive side, in Ceredigion, I think it's important for us to point out that Dyfed Powys Police, per head of population and per stop, recover more drugs from individuals than anywhere else in Wales and England. Our officers, when they stop people in intelligence-led stop searches, they recover drugs in just under half of those cases, which is a far higher proportion than anywhere else in the country. That doesn't mean that every other person in Ceredigion is carrying some form of controlled drug. What that means is intelligence-led. It's focused on the people that we believe need to be stopped, either because of their offending history, because of their suspicious behaviour, or because of our other knowledge and intelligence about that individual. So we're working hard to tackle the drugs issue at the present time. We have initiatives in place to actually test offenders for particular offences in our custody units for drugs, so that we can actually deal with that. That's useful, actually, and maybe you would like to raise this. Ian has some additional information about how we use this that might be of interest to members.
Thank you. Yes, the thing I think, and I'm sure members will be aware of, the very good partnership working that does go on across Ceredigion, across other parts of the force as well. But I've been back in the county now for just the last few months, and I'm really impressed with the strength of the partnership work that has considered, which has developed really, where I've looked across in some other parts of the country, and I've been working with the College of Policing for the last couple of years. Because of the challenges of resourcing partnership working, in some places that has fallen off. That definitely isn't the case in Ceredigion, and particularly around integrated offender management, where we work with a multitude of agencies, primarily the probation service and the newly formed CRCs. And we have what we call a cohort of agreed targets. They are people who have got a record of breaking the law, getting convicted. They might get dealt with within a court setting and a prison setting, and get back out into society. And what we're trying to do is to drive down that repeat offending, because what we do find is, particularly where drugs are concerned, the links to other forms of criminality, particularly property crime, are quite high. And so by targeting our resources collectively at preventing that reoffending, we're making a difference. So I think the big issue around the actual controlled drugs, we take that very seriously. But as the Chief Constable said, the legal highs element is a real cause for concern and safety, and that substance misuse. And I include alcohol within that as well, because when you look at the drivers for crime, all of those factors are quite prevalent in what are relatively low figures, but they do have quite an impact.
Thank you. The next is Cynghorydd Credit Davies.
Okay, Credit Davies.
Well, as somebody who represents the Aberystwyth Town Centre, my experiences with the police is a positive one. Your PCSOs are to be commended. We see them more often than your actual police officers, and the ones you've got in Aberystwyth are doing an excellent job. A couple of points I'd like to raise, and I have raised them at other occasions as well. Whenever people come to see me and have issues, particularly antisocial behaviour and the like, and I always tell them to ring the police in order that it's recorded, and therefore you can apply your resources where you get a complaint. The downside to that is that it adds to the statistics. We had an issue in one of the streets in Aberystwyth because the licensed premises wasn't being run properly, and there was a lot of issues there. And because the neighbours were ringing up and complaining, about 6 months down the road, when the press, Welsh press then sort of gave details of criminal or antisocial hotspots in Wales, this particular street in Aberystwyth came up top. And then people are reluctant to report because it could affect their property values. So there are issues there of how the information does go out to the media, because people do get a disproportionate idea of how big a problem it is. The other issue is your 101 service, and when people ring the 101, sometimes they don't, in my reasoning, they don't get the correct response. Quite often the work between what the police are responsible and what the local authority are responsible overlap, and the information given out by the 101 staff isn't always the correct information in my mind. And the other issue for our town centre is the loss of the CCTV system in the town has been a retrograde step, in my opinion. It was a tool to prevent crime, and it was also a tool in order to solve crime. And I would like to see CCTV cameras brought back into town. And found this being I lost half a tooth, so I'm conscious of this morning.
Didn't touch it.
So reporting stuff, your 101 system and the CCTV cameras.
Councillor, I hope you don't lose that tooth when things got out of hand in the chamber. First of all, you make a very valid point, I think, in respect of the statistics and in respect of what people do and do not report as crime or antisocial behaviour. Because we are very fortunate to live in an area which has a pretty civil society, relatively low levels of crime, relatively low levels of antisocial behaviour, that means people in our area will be inclined to report things happening in their communities that might not be reported in some of the more urban areas. So it is possible, with the way we have to record these things, that people's views could become skewed in terms of that. And I think this is more about how the statistics are used rather than the recording of them at all, because we have to record what's reported to us. So I think it's I think this is one really about strong local advocacy about actually what these figures really mean, because you're quite right, people will report things in Ceredigion that need to be dealt with, which are not top-end crime, but are things which affect their quality of life. And I think you do raise an important point about the narrative that we put around that. And I think that's one really where the police and the local authority can put some context around these things when they are put into the public domain. I think it is a very important point that you raise. The comments about 101, I will take as comments and feedback, and I will take those away. We're doing some work at the moment to look at how effective our call centre arrangements are. And I will take those observations that you've made away and feed those into the work that we're doing at the moment, because there is still more improvement that we need to make. We're quite comfortable with our response to the 999 system. We're quite pleased with our response times on the whole in 101. It varies because as call volumes vary, but if there are some improvements that we can make in those specific areas, then we will aim to do so. So thank you for those. In terms of CCTV, I think this is an example of partnership working where we need to look at what the difference has actually been in terms of the removal of CCTV. This has happened in a large number of communities right across the UK as a whole. We would share the view that properly directed CCTV with skilled operators at the right time can have an impact. And there are a small but important number of very serious crimes where CCTV has been a very useful tool indeed. But I think it's a matter that in terms of our partnership working going forward, we need to look at to see actually what has changed as a result of the withdrawal of CCTV and what is the best home for our investment as in partnership between the police and the local authority. What have we lost from CCTV going, and is that the best way for us to invest? I agree there's some work to be done there, but I won't comment on the wider decision making around that. Thank you, Councillor.
Just to make a comment on that, I've always had the impression that if you don't ring up and report something, then we wouldn't find call it the hotspots or whatever. That's the way I've always operated in Newquay. At least ring up, otherwise, it's recorded, and then the actual police authority can see where there may be problems, but at least they know about it in the communities. And that's the way I've always advocated it, to actually ring up and let them know, even if nothing can be done about it.
The next one I've got is Councillor Mark Strong. Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you very much for coming to see us today, and thanks for your presentation. It's very interesting. You have talked about several statistics about the performance and how many CSOs you've got. I'm very happy that there's some in Aberystwyth, and they are always friendly and they are very dependent. You can depend on them, and I have dealt with some of them very often. One of them I would congratulate is Constable Full, who has come out and been very patient in difficult situations with a young person. They had to stop and search that person because there was a suspicion that he had drugs, and he was very patient when he dealt with this situation. So I'd like to pass that to him, please. And a couple of things that have been raised in my ward, and I suspect it to be the same in other wards in Aberystwyth as well, is the situation with parking, where we know that there are responsibilities for putting parking tickets. Those responsibilities are with the county council. But the situation where there are no yellow lines and they are parked on the pavements, this has happened a lot of times in my ward, where I have had to phone 101, and other people in my ward have phoned 101 as well to speak with someone and get people out. One thing I'd like to ask is, what kind of policy do you have if this happens? Do you have a policy to give them a warning for the first time, or if it's serious enough, or if it happens very often, do you give them a ticket straight away? Because the evidence I have from other people who have reported this to me after reporting to you is that they believe that the officers don't want to give a ticket on vehicles, and that they say that 101 passes the responsibility to the county council. And it's like a ball that's being kicked back and forth from you and the county council, and that's how they feel. I have different experiences, but I've had a reason to get your police officers out to look at quite a severe incident with parking, where someone was in a wheelchair who had to go on the road because people were parking on the pavement quite regularly. So I'd like to get an answer to that first, please. Also, people have referred me to the incident of phoning 101 and try to get the service through the medium of Welsh. And they've told me that 8 times out of 10, the people who phoned with parking often enough, they have to wait and wait and wait. And then a message comes up to say, if you'd like to speak with an English consultant, then you can press 1. So they do that because they are fed up of waiting then for the Welsh service. And I think that this affects the statistics of who uses these services in Welsh.
But also, on occasion, you get something happen where people are transferred to an English language service where someone is available to speak Welsh to, and that happens very often, and it's happened to me. And I would like to hear what solutions you may have for this, since the Welsh Language Commissioner and the rules have changed recently. If I can come in there, that is becoming a rather lengthy question. They have heard the question, please give them an opportunity to answer.
Thank you, Councillor. First of all, in terms of, thank you for your comments about our office, and we'll make sure that is fed back. As I mentioned before, I feel the same way that you do about the importance of that local neighbourhood contact. Community support officers really have built a level of trust and approachability that we didn't think was possible in the past. And I have to say, my experience and anecdotal evidence is that the public feel more comfortable approaching community support officers than they do police officers. Now actually that's something to be welcomed, because these people have become our experts in community engagement and dealing with local problem solving, so we're very pleased with that. You do raise a difficult issue in respect of parking. Yes, infringement of parking regulations is a matter for the local authority. However, obstruction is a matter for the police, quite rightly so. We also, as well, have to look at the, if you like, the common sense and practical approach of policing in areas that were built before the motor car, or when there weren't so many cars about, and how people have to live now. And there has to be a balance in terms of common sense and law enforcement. But in some cases, I think what you're pointing to here is actually the balance might have shifted the other way. And I think there's probably some local problem-solving work that needs to be done in this area, and I think that's what we need to do, to actually look at how can we make this workable. So that people aren't, people's parking isn't really making it difficult for other road users, whilst accepting that we all have to live together and rub along. So I think there's some problem solving, and sometimes that means a ticket is necessary. So I think if we can arrange some of that.
Yes, we've got a note of that, and I'm going up to Aberystwyth now later today, so I'll speak to the local inspector. But that is, what you've described there is a classic problem that I would hope that local neighbourhood policing teams would work in partnership with other agencies and the residents there in order to try to find the best solution that we can in what quite often are can get quite heated situations.
May I come in on that?
Well, I was caught on the sharp end of this point, parking on the pavement in Llanilla, and I had a note put on my windscreen telling me what a naughty boy I was, not to do it again, and it's been effective.
Right.
May I just, there was a point raised about the 101 service through the medium of Welsh. And I think this is an important matter. If I could explain to members how this works. We actually have a significant number of control room operators who are Welsh speaking and can deal with people through the medium of Welsh. Not all of them, but a significant number. However, they can also deal with people effectively in English. So frequently what will happen is that when a call comes in from somebody who opts to speak to an operator through the medium of Welsh, those operators might already be speaking to somebody either in Welsh or English. So what happens is naturally there can be a time delay. Now we've employed some more Welsh-speaking control room operators, and we're doing our best to overcome this problem. Sometimes, of course, we have to focus on the fact that what's really important to us is we have to find out what the member of the public is calling us about in case it's something serious and urgent. So we will at some point default to answering that call from any operator at all. But we do recognise that this is very frustrating for people who wish to conduct their business with us through the medium of Welsh. We want to make that possible, but I would ask members to bear with us. We're working to improve that service, but a number of times, you know, our excellent control room operators will be dealing with other callers, and they'll be dealing. They don't sit waiting for just Welsh language calls. They will be dealing with calls in English as well. We do understand how frustrating that is. We are working hard to fix it. We have employed additional staff who speak Welsh. We've actually gone over our normal establishment in our control room at the moment to do this. I do recognise how frustrating that is. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
I see the time is wearing on. We are meant to have another meeting at 11:30. I have another 6 members who wish to speak. First of all, Councillor Lyndon Lloyd. Please don't reiterate any points that have already been expressed. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I shall be brief. Please
learn that the delinquents are that side of the chamber, but the rogues are down here. And on behalf of the rogues, I speak, you know, and I'm looking at them around me. I'll be rapidly saying that the image of the county, I have a contact, obviously people know, I have a contact in the High Court and the Crown Courts of Wales, and there are concerns that a very large number of cases are now coming to Swansea Crown Court and North Wales as well, from this delightful county of Ceredigion. Because I recall the days when the judge came to the assizes in Lampeter and to the Court of Sessions in Lampeter, and he was handed a pair of white gloves, year after year after year. And that's not long ago, about 20, 30 years ago. So there is that issue, and the press, as you noticed, Cambrian News, Tywyside, the Herald, is full of referrals in Swansea where the judges have to deal with drug issues and violence as well. And that needs looking at. But the public are referring cases to you and are dealing with it. I move on immediately to thank you for your help for many years in dealing with mental health issues. And I think we should, as a county council, especially in the social services department, thank you for your help. Every time I go to Carmarthen these days, I'm arrested. A tap on my shoulder and I'm arrested. I think I'm on bail about 100 times from there. I look round and I see a senior officer of a very high rank that I remember was on the back of an ambulance with me taking a mentally ill person from Aberystwyth, from this county, to St David's Hospital, and he was a mere constable. And I'm very glad to see that they have risen in the force in Dyfed-Powys.
What's your question?
No, it's an important, Madam Chairman, that we do acknowledge the service that this police force has given to us as a county council through the social services. In fact, we couldn't cope without their services and their support in dealing with very difficult situations. My question is, on behalf of the elderly, we are hearing far too often the scams within this county that operate on the elderly. Would you please give full attention to that? Can I finally say that the farm watch in the Beulah area is very effective in passing on concerns about the proverbial white vans and then passing it on to you. So do work with your partnership, and my final words is of the community officer in Beulah who goes to the school, goes to the 3 schools that we have, and are linked up with the community. And that's a very, very effective service in a rural area. It's enough to talk about Aberystwyth. You come down to the rural area. That's where the challenge is, where these guys come down the M4 and down to South Ceredigion. They go round the farms, whipping off anything they can put their hands off, and are down the far end of the M4 before you can come home and find things are gone. But scams on the elderly are a growing concern. And I ask, are you giving, no doubt you are, giving full attention to that? Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch, Councillor. If I just would draw people's attention to an operation that we're running at the moment, which is Operation Rogue Trader, which is exactly about this, providing advice to people, particularly people who live alone or who are vulnerable, in terms of some of the doorstep traders, what to do. Because, of course, this isn't always illegal, this behaviour, but making sure that they know how to protect themselves, how to check for identification. We have previously circulated cards which say that cold callers are not welcome. So there's a lot of work that's taking place with local officers, which local officers are leading, to actually help people protect themselves from rogue traders or from some of these scams, and know how to report this. The member's right to talk about Farm Watch. That is actually really growing in our community at the moment, and is invaluable with our type of road network. And I know that we're short of time, but it would be remiss of me not to mention the point about mental health issues. The work that we're doing with the NHS at the moment in terms of properly identifying where a case is a mental health matter and not a criminal offence, has reduced the number of people exponentially that we are detaining under the Mental Health Act. It is not perfect, but we're trying to make sure that people who are mentally ill are dealt with as patients and not as criminals where we possibly can. And we've made great strides there. Thank you, Councillor.
Gareth Davies.
Gareth Davies next.
Dyfed-Powys Police was held in high regard and esteem for the excellent work, partly for the excellent work they did with the events that took place in Machynlleth and their engagement with the general public at that time. A recent police inspectorate report has criticised the authority for the way they engage or their lack of engagement with the general public. What steps are being taken to rectify this?
Thank you, and I'm as disturbed as you are by the HMIC, the recent HMIC report. I think we can speak to our communities to ask them whether they feel that there is lack of engagement with Dyfed-Powys Police, because that is not what I see between our communities and our local police officers. So we do have an issue with that. A lot of the matters, I'm going to be a little bit outspoken about the latest HMIC reports. A lot of the matters that were included in those reports were very process orientated. So, for example, some of the big city forces had folders which gave information about particular communities. Because of the way that our officers are embedded in communities and their local knowledge, we hadn't followed suit with that. We didn't have a folder that told us that there was somebody living at number 27, etc., because our officers knew that. However, the inspectorate, in the way that they inspect us, didn't identify that. So we put in place an action plan, a very comprehensive plan, based on the HMIC's recommendations, to make sure that our officers and staff who are engaged in their communities and working hard get the proper credit and recognition. And the next time that we have an inspection, you will see a huge difference. But you know, the fact of the matter is, the way I would take the HMIC inspection is that is absolutely my responsibility to make sure that we get that done properly. Do not read that as lack of engagement from our people in your communities, because they are working extremely hard and are as dedicated as they've ever been. Thank you.
And diolch.
Thank you. Next one is Councillor Dymason. Thank you.
You see the role of country community policing.
up in my area, we're quite out in the countryside. Nobody wants to see a police car going round, but it's great to see the Land Rover that's coming round. And it does come round, and they do stop and talk to you. I think it's a great service, that is. I don't know how many, is it just one Land Rover that you've got in Ceredigion? I think it's an essential part of the policing, and I'm sure it does work very well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for that feedback. Again, it's a challenge to get resources. I'm just glad that that is you know, beneficial, because you know local policing, whatever you want to call it, neighbour policing, community policing. I think it's about talking to people, and you know what you've said there, that they stop and talk. That's what I try to encourage, and thank you for the feedback.
Councillor Catherine Miles.
Just butted in when you were talking about the legal highs, because I had a little question about that. As we know, if the legislation does go through to make all psychoactive substances illegal, will that help or hinder your work, do you feel? And is the new, if it does go through, is the new legislation going to be enforceable?
Yeah, I mean, my honest answer is I don't know. What concerns me is that there is such a plethora of substances that people can ingest, or however they take it, which is having an unknown effect. I can't help think that we cannot educate people enough on this, and it's about constantly getting that message across. But particularly where you're talking about young people involved, we all know, I mean, we spoke earlier about the sexting. It is about pushing boundaries when you're young, and perhaps not really fully appreciating what it is that you're ingesting. But some of these substances, we just don't know the long-term effects. We unfortunately see some of the short-term effects. I think it will be a challenge from the viewpoint of gaining prosecutions, but if it's a case of enforcement activity, it certainly will help us to give us a power to act, whereas sometimes when it is young children, we've got our Children's Act and our safeguarding issues that we can fall back on. But we are seeing this, and I'm putting the young people up to that sort of 25 age group. When you're outside of that child category under 18, then that legislation wouldn't be available to us. So certainly bringing those under a legislative banner will at least give us a legislative route so that we can act within the law.
Councillor, when you mentioned would it help or hinder our work, I think the issue for us, of course, it would become our work. I think so. Actually, it would become a matter for us to deal with. Could we deal with it on our own? Absolutely not. We would deal with the criminal elements of it and the safeguarding elements of it. And if I may just briefly mention, from a previous life, there was an investigation carried out, or a piece of research carried out, into the use of legal highs, mostly at that time, meow meow, in the Gwent valleys. And what that indicated was that very young children were using these substances, but that actually the root cause of these problems were more about self-esteem, potential for the future, how they were valued in school, how they were performing at school, the communities in which they lived, etc. So if we really want to tackle legal highs, this has to be a real combined effort. You know, if they become prescribed, then we will take the law enforcement element, but if we try and deal with it by just law enforcement, then it will not be successful. It would need to be a much broader approach to dealing with this issue.
My next one is Councillor Maldwyn Lewis.
My concerns as well is about safeguarding, and as a member of the Authorities Licensing Committee, we recently discussed the service delivery plan for 2016-2017. Item 9 on that agenda was to conduct reactive intelligence-led test purchasing initiatives, as well as surveys in relation to underage alcohol sales and off-licensed premises in conjunction with yourselves, with the police. What I'm asking is there was discussion at that meeting about the barriers between what responsibilities of the police and responsibilities of the trading standards here at the authority. And if there's a way of reviewing those responsibilities and having a more cohesive way of working, and we do believe that test purchasing is an important aspect, but the reduced budgets is causing a bit of a concern for us. Thank you.
I'm aware I authorised an operation pretty much at the start of the year, and I think there was an issue around some concerns about one thing that happened along there. And I think people within the council would, I'm sure, want to send John Evans best wishes from a licensing perspective. John's not very well and he's having treatment, but for those of you that know him, he's definitely fighting, and we wish him all the very best. But yes, I'll certainly pick that up with Inspector Rosanna Lloyd, because I think we've got to consider what the best suite of options are for us, and I wouldn't want funding to be certainly an issue for that. But I think there are some issues around proportionality and those safeguarding that we just have to make sure that we're not exposing young people to risks that are not proportionate to what we're trying to deliver. But I'll follow that up.
I'm sure we'd all like to wish John the best. He's been very good as far as licensing committees have been. He's a very, very knowledgeable person. Wish him well. I hope he gets better. The
next one I have is Councillor John Lumley. Thank you, Chair. I comment first about the 101 number. I used this recently. I mislaid my keys when I was on holiday, and I received a very good service from the 101 service. So it's not all bad. It worked well. I did not get my keys back, but I did receive a good service in any case. But my question, following on from what Councillor Dai Mason had to say about the neighbourhood policing. Many years ago, we, as a community council, we were informed that we would have a named police officer for the community for us to deal with directly, and was meant to attend community council meetings and so on. Now that seems to have been kicked into the long grass to a certain extent, so I'm just asking what the situation is. Is that still going, or what's happened? May I say the same thing has happened in Newquay as well? Thank you.
I was working in Llanelli at the time when neighbourhood policing actually first started, and I think that very ambitious aim to get a named contact for every community was very laudable. However, the practicalities of that aren't so easy. So our neighbourhood policing is really a team effort. We have constables, we have a small number of constables that are dedicated to neighbourhood policing, and they are small in number. So for them to be your straightaway contact point is really difficult, and I think in rural areas such as we have here, it would be unwise of me to say that every community is going to have a named contact point. What we try to do is to make ourselves available from a team approach. You do have police community support officers who are dedicated to areas, and sometimes they're covering quite large areas, and it is a concern for me. And one of the things I'm wrestling with at the moment is how can I best use the powers and the skills that the police officers have to best target where they can be. Now, I haven't come down firmly on a decision yet as to what that's going to be, and I'm discussing it with colleagues as well. And certainly, you know, I'd welcome feedback in, probably not today, but in other times with councillors and other elected representatives. Because, you know, I think people do value a contact, and that contact in some cases is going to be very regular, and in other areas it's going to be very infrequent. So I don't want to promise you anything that I can't deliver. So if you were telling me you can't get access to any of our neighbourhood teams, I'd be really, really concerned. But realistically, to have a constable you know, available to you in each area, I just don't have the number of people to do that.
Thank you. Right,
And the final name I have is Odwyn. Do you want to come in?
Age limit, which you can join the police force.
There's a lower age limit, which is 18 and a half. There is no upper, so there's no upper age limit.
All right, there's a hope again then. Well, I was supposed to be a policeman, that was my mother said, so I haven't, so I might join.
We might even have a form you could fill out, sir. So,
and what are your views on the road from Lampeter to Carmarthen?
well, I mean, it's there is the story, isn't there, of the trip from Lampeter to Singapore. That once you get to Carmarthen, you've done the worst bits. And I think but in all seriousness, in terms of all of our roads in this part of the world, we have a significant issue, I think, in terms of road collisions. And in terms of the number of collisions that we have. So far, but by the end of March this year, in the whole of Dyfed and Powys, we'd had 9 fatal road collisions with 12 fatal casualties. And now, that was very high. I've looked at I've looked at our statistics for the last few years, and we're not seeing a huge growth, but we're seeing a standard level that is too high. So we have a large number of fatal road collisions in our area, simply because I think they're mostly caused by driver error, but the type of A roads that we have, in particular in Ceredigion and other parts of Dyfed and Powys, means that we will have a large number of collisions. So if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, I mean, I live myself in Narberth and I cover Pembrokeshire and Ceredigion, so I'm on the roads constantly, and I end up stopping quite a few people along my journey, and I would say I quite often give words of advice. But it is, I always say to people, really, you need to get somewhere and just allow yourself plenty of time, because if we don't, and all of you, I'm preaching to the converted there, but I think it is constantly a challenge for us, because let's face it, the police get a bad press and they say, haven't you got anything else better to do than hassle the motorists? And it isn't about hassling the motorists, really. I think it's an education issue. We get a lot of visitors. We want to welcome those visitors to our area, but we want them to drive safely. So there is an education, there is an enforcement, but unfortunately, part of the price of living in a beautiful area like this is the kind of roads that we have. And I think we've just got to live with it and do the best that we can as services.
I don't mind the speed limit, but these humps they put in now, I think, will cause more accidents before long, because I followed a lorry. I was going to Carmarthen the other day, followed a lorry. The lorry had to just about stop before going over it, and then going uphill, and saw one or two people trying to pass when they shouldn't. But
I think that's the thing, when you get a load of cars behind the lorry, what is the law there to educate the lorry drivers, etc., or wherever, to pull in if possible. That's the thing.
And another simple question again. Years ago, PC Lake we had in our area, used to go into the pubs, have a look around, and went out. The underage drinkers went out slowly so that they couldn't drink anymore, so they were behaving themselves. And the drivers then thought, I better not drive home tonight, PC Lake is around. Do you, as a police force, now go into pubs just to say hello and look around?
Definitely. I mean, you probably see a lot more of that in the towns. That's very much a tactic that we use within the towns, and certainly for our rural officers as well, as long as they don't stop too long.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
And as Di Mason said, the Land Rover, I think the local police in the rural area should be on their bikes.
Thank you for that. Anyway, I think it's been a very good dialogue, and I'd like to thank you, and I'm sure the leader would like to say a few words of thank you also.
Thank you, Chair.
the three of you for coming and for answering all our questions. But as well as that, can we thank you, Chief Constable, for your work during the time you've been with us as Chief Constable, because I was very sad to hear that you've decided to retire, and this will be the last time you're going to be with us. As chair of the local service board, as was, which is now the public service board, we've had not yourself possibly, but some of your officers working with us, and especially on the community safety partnership. There's very close working. So thank you for your partnership working with us here. Myself and the Chief Executive are very grateful. I'm sure she can speak for herself, but we are grateful for the partnership working that you have helped to succeed over the time that you have been Chief Constable. So all good wishes. Dymuniad agore o ddiwrth.
Best wishes from everyone in Ceredigion, and thank you very much.
Coming forward, and today I would not have left this you leave this meeting without actually acknowledging the staff as well as the council's gratitude to the close working partnership we do have with the police. And as chair of the community safety partnership, members here as well as myself are very satisfied, and often it is referred to Pan Wales as an exemplar. And we have been at conferences when that has been referred to, but that is due to the close partnership working, especially between fire and yourselves and the council and others. And that has been, not because it's an exemplar, we're saying great, because that has been to the benefit of our residents. And we thank you for your leadership in ensuring that you do have officers playing a major part in that partnership, each and every one. And like ourselves, you've been transforming and restructuring, but that has not impaired on the will to be good partners from either side, for which we are grateful. And on a personal note, Simon, it's been a delight. You've been with us now since 2013. Can I actually wish you well? I think there is no date to say summer 2016. We would be more than happy if that 16 got changed to another summer date. But in whatever field, we will see you again, no doubt we will. Can I actually, on a personal and council basis, wish you well? Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi.
Thank you. And I'd just like to thank you all, and I'm sure all the councillors, for quite honestly answering the questions that has been given to you today. And also, I'm sure we all wish you well in your retirement, and whoever takes over with your crew, we hope you can still have an honest dialogue going forward. Thank you. Yeah. Right, os gallwn ni mynd mlaen.
If we may proceed, then I'm aware that the committees are awaiting to be dealt with, but if we can go to number 4 to confirm the minutes of the council held on the 24th of March. In respect, for correctness sake, does anybody propose Alan? Seconded? Do you all agree? Okay, if we can go through them, for anything arising. Page 1. Page 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. Okay. Proposed. Do you all, does anybody second that? All in favour? Thank you. Now then, moving on to number 6. I think, Erlyn, are you going to take this paper?
Is basically, it's the code of conduct, and we really can be actually short and sharp about this, or whatever it is. You've got 2 papers within your thing. You've got what you call an Annex A, which shows you changes that are going to be done. You've got a line down to it. But this morning, what has been put on your desks is actually red markings to try to make those changes a bit more clearer. But nevertheless, the most important document within it is Annex B, and that's actually the new code of conduct. It's not really, to be quite honest, up for discussion. It's a statutory document that we have to adopt by the time of our AGM, and it's put forward to you this morning. I think if you've really got any major concerns about it, it might be prudent for us to have a workshop on it to go through the code of conduct. But for me, when you read it, it is straightforward. There are some minor tweaks about it for that, but I would recommend that we actually adopt the code of conduct. That's my proposal.
Aye. Ellen, do you want to say a word? Well, if you're ready to vote to make the recommendation, though I have nothing to add. But if you had questions, I'm happy to answer them. But if you're willing to proceed, then I have nothing to add. Okay. Proposed, acceptance, all in favour? Anybody against? I don't think we can be against it, so we have to implement it. Okay, thank you. Is there, if possible, a thing has been organised, but I'll be happy to consider, you know, if training is necessary. But there are minor amendments in the document, but I'm happy to consider that. If anybody, individual members have any questions regarding the changes, please contact me shortly, either personally or by email. I'll be happy to help you in any way. Thank you.
Just ask, I am aware, Councillor Rayquant has informed me. I made a question sitting alongside this one, which was about remuneration for long-term sickness of people actually being in senior salary posts, and the Vice Chair taking over. And it was something I went back, and I would take advantage, if I may, of Councillor Quant, who came to tell me this morning that indeed that has actually gone forward to the Independent Remuneration Panel for their consideration now, because they think that there's some mileage in that to have a look at it. So at least some of the things that we do say in this chamber go forward and actually get acted on at a national level, which is quite encouraging.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, if we can proceed from there. If there's any need for a workshop, we will liaise again. Okay, number 7, to consider the reports of the Head of Finance upon framework contracts and procurement thresholds. Maldon's leaving. I think, David, you're going to start us off. And then Steve will come in. Yeah, so what we have here, Chair, is the idea of facilitating the way contracts are given. And because we use frameworks for most most contracts, and at times it's necessary to move quicker than what the present system might allow and enable us to do. So therefore we want to raise the sums that officers can, by which officers can operate to without coming back to Cabinet or to Council on. That's been through Cabinet, it's been through the Audit Committee, which has looked at it in detail and has amended the wording to some extent to make it more transparent. And therefore, I would, if there are any questions, I'm sure that Steve and I would have been willing to answer them. But seeing as it has been audited in detail, I would recommend that we go with the recommendation, namely that the Chief Executive or the Deputy Chief Executive, in consultation with the Strategic Director or the Head of Finance, and also the Cabinet Member for Financial Services, shall have the delegated authority to accept frameworks up to 3 million, then any contract up to 1 million. I hope we can just allow that. Thank you. Seconded.
Right, so, os unrhyw gwestiynau Steve gynta cyn... Na? Right, so...
No questions then? Recommend? Sorry, John.
I'm all for speeding up the system. Just one little question. When it comes to a call-off, is there a penalty financial clause involved with that?
So, the access about question,
Could you clarify the question?
Context on what do you mean?
Yeah.
Do you mean is a penalty within the...
In the appendix introduction, it says that it's actually called a call-off, and there's a list of bullet points. But, you know, if you break a contract, then there's usually a penalty clause in there. A call-off allows you to break a contract. Now, is there a financial penalty for that?
By call-off here, we're referring to a different message, really. So when you've got a contract in place, you've got, you may have call-offs or penalties arrangements set out in the contract. But what we're doing here, we're referring to a framework agreement, which is an agreement between one or more buying authorities and one or more suppliers. And once that's in place, we then, an individual authority can decide to do a call-off from that agreement and decide to offer work and offer a contract to one of the suppliers. So that's what we mean by call-off. We just call down from that umbrella contract and offer the work to the named awarded supplier that's already on that framework as approved. So that's all we're saying. It's just jargon, really, calling off, calling down from the contract.
Right. Cynghorydd Peter Davies.
Councillor Peter Davies. Evans, sorry.
Davies and good, told.
Davies is good, you see. That's what I was. It's easy to say. Have I understood this correctly? How does the new framework, how will it help small businesses in Ceredigion, where they're dependent to a great extent on small businesses, very small businesses, which maintain and sustain, which are sustained throughout a lot of the county, and then tying this framework agreement between authorities and so forth, how will that affect small businesses going for work with the county council, for instance? What we have done in respect to the framework is to create a framework for the small companies within Ceredigion, and in order to try to facilitate those small companies becoming suppliers for the council. And I think that has been a system which it's only just come in, but it's a system that does work. We've seen changes in council suppliers following bringing in the new framework, and also the framework was nominated for a prize across the whole of Britain. It was in the last 10 to as a prize. Ray went up to that event, which shows that we are leading the way in thinking about small companies. On the back of that, then, does that mean, can I be confident that the new framework won't put small businesses at a disadvantage, or they'll be penalised because they're small? No, we're trying to do our best to make sure that the smallest companies do become suppliers, as you said, because we're of the same opinion as you, that we need to look after our local businesses, and of necessity, because they're local, most of them are small companies. But the intention is to support them, in seeking for work within the system. In doing the framework, what we've also done is to open up the markets with our partners, which are part of the framework. So it's not just the council, but the other bodies which within the public sector. Sorry, I understand that. But there are businesses, indigenous businesses within Ceredigion, perhaps. Some of them might have an interest in applying, and the kind of work they do, perhaps our offer might be suitable for doing the kind of work in another county or another organisation, as you said. But we must safeguard the small indigenous businesses of Ceredigion. Also, we need to look after them. It would be a bad thing. The county council would be negligent if we went in a certain direction which might put small businesses under a disadvantage. Well, I agree. That's why we've gone down the road with this framework. Sorry, Ellen. Thank you. May I endorse what David is saying? There are two different things. There are two different levels of operating here. There are national frameworks which are open to all throughout Wales. They include Welsh companies on the whole, not of necessity from Ceredigion, because the level of service they offer, for instance, constructing a school, Llandyssil School, for instance, nobody within the borders of the county can offer that kind of service to us. So we have to go out, but as David has explained, George Riley, our procurement officer, has done a lot of good work, and to ensure that we have a framework to facilitate the way for local companies on the level of expenditure that they can cope with. Because on the whole, we don't have very large companies which can cope with some of the large schemes. But we are doing our best to promote local businesses as best we can. And as I say, I'm very grateful to George Riley for the work he's done. Because in forming a framework, they don't have to go to so much detail in making an application for a tender, because they've already been selected to be on the framework. So it facilitates the work for small companies also in moving forward. So I hope you will agree. Two different levels, types of agreements here. 3 million for those that are already on the framework, 1 million for those, any other tenders which may have to go out. So I second the proposal. I'd be grateful if we could move forward. We have a couple of people who want to speak again. Ross Davies, first of all. Thank you, Chair. I know that we're talking about finance here, but when these tenders go out, it's important that things in these framework regarding health and safety, because I have had issues in Drefach recently. I've raised it on the highway side time after time. And it's important that we follow up on this when tenders go out, that we follow them up on health and safety, or somebody will get hurt and the council will be blamed. Thank you. We'll note that. Thank Councillor Lyndon Lloyd. Very quickly, Madam Chair. Oh, he's learnt. Laughter. All I have to say is, you see, when I hear people talking about tenders, meat comes to schools and other people's homes in this county from Pembrokeshire. Well, you know, we have enough butchers in the county. Always have been tendering for various parts of the county. Somebody in my ward lost the contract. He was helping schools, but if I may intervene there, I think that it's better to go back, take that back down to scrutiny when you scrutinise, because here it's an overall picture, not down to any detail. Yeah, I know where you're coming from, and I'm sure we all feel the same, because it's important that the people of Ceredigion do have an opportunity to do these things. Madam Chair, to be fair, and with your kind permission, the point that needs to be made is that the press are giving out that we support Ceredigion. There are people coming to us and saying, well, I tendered. But one thing I need to say is perhaps it's high time that the organisations and the small companies came together, and that's the message I'm giving to those in my ward. Come together. and then you can put in a tender. I agree, yes, indeed. One more, Councillor Tywyn Evans. Well, most of my feelings have been stated already. I welcome anything which eases things into the procurement system. The points that have been raised are correct. In an ideal world, we would want every company from Ceredigion to be successful, you know, but at least the way I see it, what we have before us is there's an opportunity within the framework, the new framework, for everybody to make an application. Whether they're successful every time, that's another matter. But procurement is something that can create a lot of jobs, something that we don't look at in enough detail in comparison with areas, with other countries, perhaps. As we haven't concentrated sufficiently on procurements, but I accept what's before us this morning. I'm ready to support it. As we heard, there are 2 frameworks available, something over 3 million. I assume it will come within the other framework, but I accept what we have before us. Linda, Eiros, and yourself, and I think we all feel the same. We have small businesses in Ceredigion, and we need to keep them. They create jobs in Ceredigion for the people of Ceredigion. From here on, I think Elin wants to come in with recommendations. Well, concerning the recommendations, this is more of a legal point, perhaps, fundamentally, but also for assurance and security when the changes go into the Constitution, it may be important also. Just in respect of the recommendation, the officers and the member who are going to be part of this process, may I ask you for an assurance? I'll read it to you.
The Chief Executive or the Deputy Chief Executive and one other Strategic Director or the Head of Finance and Cabinet Member.
That's the wording in the recommendation. Perhaps I'm a little bit slow, or maybe I'm seeing something that's not there. But it's not entirely clear in my mind how many persons or which level of persons should be part of the process. Well, the way I read it, I don't know. I don't think it's clear from the recommendation as it's worded. Maybe that's why I wanted to be clear, and the decision you make should be clear, that the intention was the Chief Executive or the Deputy Chief Executive, that is one or the other, plus the Director, the Strategic Director, well, one of them, or the Head of Finance. So any of the Directors or the Head of Finance is the second person to be part of it. Plus then, the third person is the Cabinet Member. So the way it reads is it could be Head of Finance and Cabinet Member, that is, that those two have to be, or the Strategic Director could be working on his own. So to be clear, the intention is that there should be 3 persons in the process. The groups of people are the Chief Executive, or the Deputy Chief Executive is one. Secondly, the second group is the Strategic Director or the Head of Finance. And the third person is the Cabinet Member, whoever that may be. Yes, I agree with you in... It's like 3 blocks. I agree, perhaps we need additional commas in there, but, you know, I tried to, the way I said it previously, I'd hoped that I'd put the gaps in to try to express the points you made. Perhaps it's semantics, but when you're trying to define... No, I agree. When you try to act, sometimes the commas and the and-os can be crucial. That's why I raised it. You're quite right. 3 blocks. So 3 persons. So I can't see the leader. Okay, now I think we understand now. There'll be 3 persons there. And do we all... We'll have to put these changes in. What will we? The Constitution will be amended, but from today, this process will from today. So we can proceed with recommendations as Elin has explained them. Does anybody propose and second that or agree? Okay. Anybody against? Hag?
Sleep, or are you with us?
I was reading something.
Yeah, well, no, it's allowed, but when I ask for everybody to vote, please put your hand up. Shall we say to do it again then? Yeah. Rhywun yn erbyn.
Against? All abstentions? Thank you very much. I was checking you went to sleep.
Right, mae un peth...
I have one thing. Where are we now? The next is to elect number 8.
Chairman with the Council for 2016-17 to be installed at the annual meeting held at 2 p.m. on Friday, the 20th of May. Pwy
Who, David, is it you? Yes, I won't spend too much time on this because we all know how good Dai has been as deputy chair. He's enjoyed himself. He's dipped his toes in the water and he's enjoyed it so much he wants to carry on for another year and go to every meeting he can. So I propose that Dai takes over from you. He has quite a job filling your shoes, but I'm sure that he'll do quite well. So I propose that Dai takes over as chair. Thank you. Seconded. Hag, are you?
No, aren't you supposed to second Dai Mason's...
Right, so that was...
Yn iawn, pob un...
Okay, do you all agree? Okay. Apart from Dai, obviously? After. Very good. And I'm sure that the year will be a successful one for you. Well, thank you all for your support. It'll be a privilege and an honour. I'll do my best. I'll give you 100% to the post. It's going to be difficult following. My fellow chair, Councillor Jopley, has done very good work, and with it has been no problem at all. Thank you very much from all. I'm sure you'll do a better job than me. Okay, moving on to number 9, to elect a vice chairman elect for the council for 2016-17 to be installed at the annual meeting of the council held at 2 o'clock on Friday, 20th of May. Does anybody propose? Yes, I will. It's my pleasure to propose Councillor Linford Thomas as Deputy Chair elect for the year 2016-17. The roots of Linford are in the same valley as me, the Tower Valley. He's moved to another valley, different Avon, the Avon Valley, and I'm sure that he'll be a very, very suitable Deputy Chair to Dai. Good luck for the future. Seconded by Brian. Yes, it's a great pleasure for me to support and to second the proposal made by Councillor John Lumley. I've only known Linford for 4 years, well, since we were both elected to the County Council, but in that brief time I've come to respect and admire him. He's a very nice man, sincere, honest and principled. He's a Cymru man and a Welshman to the core. He's a good example to all of us across the chamber. Linford, as I came to this county from outside, but the interests of Ceredigion and our priority. I'm sure Lyndon will be an asset to the authorities as Vice Chair, and I hope that in a year you'll be a very active Chair for Ceredigion. So very good luck. Do you all agree? Thank you. Anybody against? Thank you very much. Congratulations, both of you, and I hope you'll have a successful year. Linford, do you want to say a word? Well, just a word of thanks. I accept the post with pride and honour, not only for me personally, but for Llandangosod Ward also. I'll do my very best for you. I'll do as much as I can. But if some of you had been in Capel Tynagundon last Sunday, there would have been a very interesting sermon there for you from Councillor Lyndon Lloyd regarding filling the shoes. Filling people's shoes. It's impossible to fill any person's schools. We only have one pair of shoes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right, mae un peth arall...
Okay, well, Madam Chair, may I thank Lyndon for the reference. He was the only one awake, so he's learned something, obviously. Okay, Yes, I have one, AOB, which is, if I may read it to you. The letter has come...
Interest here.
Right, okay.
Sorry, I to read that.
Do I need to declare as well? I work for the health board. How about the health board? Yes. Well, you can leave after you hear, maybe, perhaps.
Sorry, on the 21st of April, can I just carry on? You can walk out if you think you've got a declaration of interest. Can I just carry on and do this first and then, yeah? The Council on 21st of April, under any other business, is to nominate a representative to the Centre of Excellence in Rural Health and Social Care Management Board. As you, right, now keep here, as you're aware, you will be aware, the recent WHC board meeting held in March at Dolgellau, approval was to establish the proposed Centre for Excellence in Rural Health and Social Care. On behalf of Mr. Jack Evershed and Dr. Ruth Hall, Independent Co-Chairs, and Dr. Sue Fish, Clinical Programme Director, I now write to invite you to nominate one representative of Ceredigion County Council to be a member of the Centre of Excellence in Rural Health and Social Care Management Board, for which the first meeting will be next month. Right, the first Management Board meeting will take on the 3 p.m. on Monday, 9th of May, in Dr. Fish's office at Bronglais.
Asking for one representative. I propose the leader, Ellen Upgwyn, Chair. Seconded? All agree? Against? Abstentions?
Okay, that's fine. So, Mawerikali.
So it's been carried. Yes, everybody happy? Thank you. Thank you all very much. As you know, this is my last meeting as chair. I'd like to thank you all for your support, but please don't go, because we need to decide on the chairs and vice chairs for the forthcoming year. We should have started at 11:30, but I'm sure we won't be long before going through everything. Can we just, at the end of this meeting, to thank you formally, Jill. This is her last meeting during this term, and I'd like to thank you very much, Jill, for the way that you have filled the chair. You have kept everybody in order, in better order than others, and you've also kept everybody happy and laughing throughout, and that's an excellent way of being able to chair, to keep things in order with humour. That's one of your characteristics. So therefore, thank you very much for the work that you have done during the year. The leader has thanked you, Jill, on behalf of the council, and I'd like to take this opportunity because in part of the formal thanks that will happen in the annual meeting, but that doesn't include our personal thanks. The staff would like to thank you for being chair, because being chair, you deal with a great number of staff, whether you represent the council or you